The good old hot take. Everyone has them, especially here in the reptile community. I asked you guys to give me some of your reptile hot takes, and you guys did not disappoint. Now, because you guys submitted so many, I couldn't get them all, so I randomly did select a few that we're going to go over today. Feel free to discuss down in the comments. Feel free to argue and to fight. I want this to be the most dysfunctional comment section in all of YouTube. I'm just kidding, obviously. Let's be civil. But seriously, go down and discuss in the comments as each one is stated. Let me know your thoughts, guys. So here's how this is going to work. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to go over them from what I think is least agreeable to what I think is most agreeable, and we're just going to kind of discuss our thoughts on it. Now, this is a community video again, so feel free to comment below. So the first one says that morphs, projects, hybrids with uncontrollable known life-altering neurological or physical deformities, such as spider ball pythons that can't be bred out, should not be supported or legal. And I think this is safe to say that most of us agree with this take. I don't think it's ethical to breed and keep breeding certain morphs that have neurological disabilities or something that will lessen their quality of life. If you're an animal lover, you won't really support that either. I don't know how you can love animals but continue to breed animals with neurological disabilities that will literally not be able to live a full life. Yeah, I don't think this one needs much discussion. I agree with this take. This next person says, I didn't think this was a hot take until today. It's not okay to let your dogs or cats get too close to your reptiles. Reptiles on average are much smaller than dogs and cats. Cats, as we know, when you let them free roam outside, tend to just kill animals and kill reptiles for fun. Dogs can be much too rough with a smaller animal, so it's, pretty good practice to keep them separate away from each other so that both of them are safe. You don't want a situation where your German Shepherd is playing with your corn snake, and you don't want a situation where your water monitor is eating your Chihuahua, that kind of thing. So again, it's safe to say I agree with this take fully. This next take says that mass breeding is a no-no. I think it shifts keepers' mindsets too much from a care perspective to more of a profit-based and profit-oriented mindset. The point of mass breeding is to up and increase profit and income from these animals. We shouldn't look at animals as cash cows or something that will just, allow us to pay our bills, because again, these are living creatures. You can't force living creatures to keep reproducing to fill your pockets. I mean, you can, but it's definitely not ethical. We got to remember that when we keep reptiles or any animals in general, we have a responsibility to treat them with kindness, with love, with care, and to give them our best as if, we're caring for ourselves. I always say we should care for our reptiles as good, if not better, than they would get in nature. And while that does take a lot of work, owning an animal is a lot of work. And if you don't want to put that work in, don't get an animal. And again, I agree with this take. This one says, stop taking your reptiles to stores without being in proper containers. No one wants your mites in a reptile shop. Now, I'm going to kind of expand on this one. While this take is true, you should probably contain your reptiles in like a container or a bin when you are bringing them around other foreign reptiles. You don't know what diseases they could have or what parasites they may carry on them. But I'm also going to expand further. Not everyone wants your lizard walking around them. I think we should, for the most part, stop taking our reptiles into places that are unfamiliar, because a lot of reptiles, it stresses them out greatly when you walk around with your big monitor on your shoulder. If that animal is not super social and is not in a proper temperature gradient, you're going to stress the animal out. It's not doing very much good. Yes, I get that you're trying to educate the public, and I vibe with that. I really do. Make sure your animal is very social. Make sure the temperature is right. Make sure whatever the humidity requirements your animal has, it's not out of somewhere for too long. Obviously, you're not going to want to take an African bullfrog and put it in a desert walking around. You know what I mean? Just look out for your animals, and before you take them into like a store or something, keep in mind whether or not you are going to stress out your animal. And if you are, that's definitely not something you should be doing. I agree with this take. This next take is saying that we should have permitting processes instead of bans. I wonder who said that? Me. I said that. And let me explain to you guys what I mean. Instead of just having all-out bans on animals, we should have permitting processes, even strict permitting processes instead of bans. All bans are going to do is make people want to go undercover, under the table, and acquire certain animals, do illegal things. What a permit stops is that people now have a legal way to obtain an animal that they want. Now, I'm under the impression that big snakes like retics, anacondas, pythons, crocodilians, venomous, even bigger monitors should not be available to the general public to keep. but they should be available to those that can care for them and give them what they require to live a happy, healthy life. I think that if you can give an animal exactly what it needs, you should be able to keep that animal no matter what it is. Now, this is controversial. A lot of you might not agree. If you can keep a pride of lions successfully, you can give them miles and miles and acres or whatever of land to have one pride of lions. You can let them hunt naturally, or you can feed them to where they're healthy. You can give them everything they need. Then you should be able to have your pride of lions. You're the one taking the risk. If you can somehow keep elephants and you can do it correctly, you can provide, I don't know what they need, a temperature controlled biodome that's like 50 by 50 miles, then you should be able to keep elephants. But if you cannot provide what they need, obviously you shouldn't be able to keep them. What bans do is it takes away people's ability, good people that know how to take care of animals, it takes away the ability to actually keep that and makes them want to go under the table. If responsible people can keep an iguana in Florida, they should be able to keep an iguana. The people that can't keep the iguana should not ruin it for everyone. And that's my hot take. This is an interesting one. It says not all reptiles are going to enjoy being held or like to be around people, and that should be okay. If you're looking for an already friendly reptile, then buy one that's already friendly and that's been interacted with. Buying a reptile you know isn't very easy to tame down or get stressed interacting with humans, then rehoming it because it isn't friendly or up to your standard is unfair. So what this person is basically saying is, before you get an animal and then you penalize that animal for not being what you expected, you should have researched that animal. So this person used a chameleon. If you get a chameleon and you have this intention that you're going to be able to take this chameleon out and free handle it and interact with it 24/7, it's unfair to get that animal. And then it's even more unfair to rehome it once it's not what you expect. What you should do is you should research the animal beforehand. If you want an animal to handle, a chameleon is not your best bet. Go with something more handleable like a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon. But if you say, oh, I want a chameleon, no matter what, if that chameleon doesn't like to be handled, that's super unfair to get it and then just get rid of it once it doesn't fit your description. So again, I agree with this take. If you guys are having fun enjoying this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so that you never miss another video. Give this video a like, share it around, and again, I hope you guys are commenting after each one and discussing your thoughts, because I really am interested to hear what you guys have to say about these takes, because I think this is a lot of fun. You guys think this is a lot of fun? I think it's a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and keep going. This is one of my favorite ones. Hot take. Lots of free range or harness time can compensate for a smaller enclosure, but a tegu, saying a 6 foot instead of an 8 foot that gets free roam several times a week, is okay in my book. Now, at first glance, I disagreed with this wholeheartedly because I saw it and I was like, my guard went up. I was like, no, this sounds like an excuse. This is an excuse. And then I thought about it and I actually sat there and I was thinking, why do we advocate for larger enclosures? What's the reason we as keepers advocate for larger enclosures? It's for more enrichment, more exercise, increased brain function, getting your animal to be curious and be able to explore, not to be in a stagnant environment that it can't really move in. Doesn't your animal get that when it free roams? Now let me add some caveats to this. I assume we're talking mostly about monitors and tegus here. If you constantly have your monitor in a space that's not the correct parameters, or if your animal is not social to where putting it on a harness or letting it free roam stresses it out and it just goes to hide every time, then no, this is not a situation where this would work. I think that this situation of having a little bit of a smaller enclosure but getting free roam time is strictly if you can provide an area or maybe outside that, one, your animal will not be stressed, and two, if it's the correct parameters. Constantly having your animal in an area that isn't the correct temperature or even the correct humidity can be detrimental. So if your room stays 66 degrees or whatever, if you constantly have your monitor walking around in that, that's not a proper temperature. It can't get warm when it needs to. It doesn't have the right environment, so it's going to be a detriment to your lizard, and that detriment is not worth free roaming. I would still say, for the most part, just get a proper sized enclosure, but I think there's more to this take than when I first saw it. So while I don't completely agree with this take, I also don't completely disagree with it. I think there's things that you need to think about, and if you do it the right way, it can be applicable. Dang, computer's gonna die. This is a fun one that gets brought up all the time. I'm probably not gonna like this response, but reptiles don't feel affection or like to cuddle. Finally, I can discuss this one. So it's been studied and proven scientifically that reptiles do not possess the part of the brain needed to show affection in the way that humans or mammals can show affection. So no, your bearded dragon does not love you. Your bearded dragon may trust you. I do think you can have a bond with your animal to the point where you guys trust each other, know each other, and your animal can be comfortable with you. This is what I always like to say. If you were at home with your dog and you left and never came back, your dog would be sad. Your dog would miss you. But if you left your bearded dragon and you never saw it again, as long as its needs were met, the thing isn't gonna miss you. I hate to break it to you guys, but it's not gonna miss you. It's not even gonna blink. It's not gonna lose a minute of sleep. But you can see this in, I'll just speak from experience, monitors. If I'm in there working with my Argus monitor, obviously he's super comfortable, and then someone steps in that he's not familiar with, obviously he's going to be a little bit taken aback because this is a new person in his space and he hasn't learned them yet. So while they can trust you and you can build a bond, and I would even say a relationship with your animal on that kind of superficial level, there's never going to be affection. Also, reptiles don't like to cuddle. Reptiles don't like to wear clothes and they don't like to cuddle. I don't know who needs to hear this. For the love of God, please stop dressing up your reptiles and please stop cuddling them. They don't like it. It's not natural. I completely agree with this take. This next take is very interesting. So the first part says snakes benefit greatly from UVB lighting. So that one is for the most part agreed on. But this person says tease feeding snakes with forceps is a terrible practice that will go the way of feeding containers in coming years. And what I assume this person's getting at is that they're saying tease feeding. So taking a rat, for example, and wiggling it in front of a snake is a terrible practice that will go the way of feeding containers in coming years. Feeding containers used to be a bigger thing where people would take the snake out of the enclosure to feed it. I don't understand why feeding a snake with forceps would be a terrible practice and kind of jigging it in front of a snake. It's more to make it seem like it's alive, and that's a better alternative than feeding live foods, which we can all agree is a lot worse than feeding frozen thawed. I don't personally see how tease feeding a snake with tweezers or forceps or tongs is a terrible practice. I don't really get this one, so I'm gonna disagree with this take. So right here we have a hot take. This one says stop breeding giant reptiles. Another one by yours truly. And I think we should stop breeding giant reptiles for the most part. Now let me explain. There are a lot of people breeding retics and berms. There's a lot of people breeding water monitors and iguanas. There's a lot of people breeding big reptiles. There is not a lot of people that can keep big reptiles. So you have a ton of supply. And while you might have a high demand, you have a very low threshold of people that can accurately and realistically care for a big snake, a snake that gets 20 plus feet or a monitor that can get 8 plus feet. There's not that many people that can dedicate a large spare room to an animal. It's just not happening. And meanwhile, you see these people selling these animals for 200, 300 bucks. You can go anywhere in the country and have access to an Asian water monitor. You can go most places in the country and have access to a snake that has potential to grow 15 to 20 feet. It shouldn't be like that. This goes back to my permitting processing. These animals should not be banned. They should not be banned from breeding, but there should be stricter limits onto who can get them for the safety of the animal and for the safety of those who keep them. Let me know if you guys agree with this take down below. So here we have a scorcher. And this one says that keeping retics is unethical. Now, retics, of course, are reticulated pythons, which are known to be the longest snake in all of the world, measuring well over 20 feet long. This person is saying that keeping them in captivity is unethical. And I see what you're getting at, but there's a lot to unpack here. Most people that keep retics are going to keep them in tiny enclosures. Man, I see 15-foot retics all the time in these 6x2x2s or 6x3x3s. It's absolutely terrible. It's animal abuse. It's terrible. If you're keeping a reticulated python in that small of an enclosure, like what are you doing? Now, I try my best not to just come down on people, but like, guys, let's be so real here. That's not right. These animals are the true kings of the jungle. They swim, they go on the ground, they climb trees. They're all dimensional animals, and you're keeping them in this box where they can't even stretch out half their body. That's very unethical. But again, I don't think those people should ruin it for those that can keep a 40x40 enclosure in their house for one reticulated python. Those people should be able to keep those snakes because they can provide the right habitat in the right environment, the right enclosure. Big snakes take big enclosures, they take big money, they take big food. You gotta be prepared. So for the most part, the way people keep retics is unethical, but keeping them themselves in captivity, if you do it right, is completely ethical, just like keeping a ball python is completely ethical. But I see what you're getting at, and I agree with this take. So this last one is a scorcher, and it's gonna make make a lot of people mad, but it needs to be said. Fish tanks are for fish. Now, of course, fish tank is just a glass aquarium, probably with a screen top. And yes, they are terrible for keeping in temperature gradients. They're terrible for keeping in humidity. They're terrible for a lot of things. I think they don't look the best. But again, there are instances where I believe they can be used advantageously to a certain extent. Once you start getting past like 40 gallon, 75 gallon, it becomes hard because the animals you're going to attempt to put in that aquarium are going to be too big for an aquarium. So once you get past like a 4-foot aquarium and you want to put like a 3-foot animal, 2-foot animal in it, just go to PVC or go to wood, go to a bigger enclosure. Get out of here with the whole keeping a monitor in a 125 long. Guys, just build a proper enclosure. If you're going to keep an animal in a fish tank, that's not a fish. So if you're going to keep a reptile in a fish tank, make sure you have a way to keep the heat in, to keep the humidity in. Make sure you have a way that that animal will be able to get in a big enough space where it can thermoregulate, have a hot side and a cool side. Basically, if you get a fish tank for a reptile, you're going to have to do all this extra stuff to turn it into a reptile safe, reptile ready enclosure. So why would you not just skip the hassle, skip the extra money and go buy a reptile enclosure? You know what I mean? That doesn't really make sense to me. Now, I have utilized fish tanks in the past. I grew up my Pilbara rock monitor in a 10 gallon, and I was able to take that 10 gallon and basically adjust the top to where it kept in some humidity and kept in some heat. I painted the side so it was blacked out. Fish tanks often tend to stress animals out because they can see out in all sides and they don't have a way to be secure. So they take a lot of modification. So just skip that step and buy a reptile enclosure. If you really want to DIY it, then DIY it. But for the most part, I definitely agree with this take. So there we go, guys. There goes a couple of your submitted hot takes. If you guys like this video, make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and let me know by liking this video and sharing it with someone you know. If you guys do want a part 2, I might consider bringing on a familiar, albeit less charming, face back onto the channel, and we'll go over your guys' new hot takes together. If you didn't make it into this video, feel free to resubmit on the next time and I will definitely try to get you in again. But if you want to submit, make sure you follow my Instagram at Mr. Will Exotic. That's where I ask you guys to submit the things and the questions and the polls and whatnot. There's a lot of interaction on there, so if you haven't joined the family over there, go join. We're growing day by day on there as well. I appreciate all of the support lately, guys. It's been crazy. I didn't go over hybrids in this video because that's a whole nother hot take, but if you guys want to see a video on hybrids, in my opinion, on hybrid reptiles, click right there in the corner and you'll be taken to a video on that. Huge shout out to my Patreon family. I very much appreciate you guys. You guys are so real. If you guys want behind the scenes content, first access on animals and discounts on animals that we produce, discounts on merch, a whole bunch of other stuff, click the first link down in the description. I would greatly appreciate it. You guys are so real. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning into today's video, and I will see you in the next one.